Well, hello, hello, hello. Welcome to the Digital Factor, episode 5. I'm here with my three amigos, Vic Sharma, Jim Filatico, and John Maniatis. How are you guys?
Great.
Great.
Excellent.
How
How
about
about
you?
yourself?
Good. Good to see you. It seems like it's been a long time since we last spoke to the
Yeah.
to the crowd.
Yeah.
So as
I,
always, everyone, just a couple of feel free if you have any comments to put those in there. We'll be monitoring those, so just feel free. We have a pretty dense topic lined up, and for episode number 5, we're going to do things a little bit differently. I am going to yield the moderator seat to my good friend Jim. Jim, what are we going to talk about today?
Thanks, Kelly. Yeah, when we were talking about the subjects for our ongoing LinkedIn Lives, one of the things we wanted to make sure we talked about was the algorithm changes that Google is constantly doing. But one that kind of stands out is the change in platform for analytics. They currently have Universal Analytics, and they are now rolling out Google Analytics for GA4. And so, to give you a little bit of background to kind of set the stage for it, um, Universal Analytics started in 2005. So if you think about 2005, back then, you're talking about, yeah, we had cell phones, but they were the size of a brick, and the only thing they could do was make calls in and out. That was it. There was no surfing, there's no texting, no anything. And Universal Analytics did a great job of collecting, storing, and reporting the data that they were able to get, because the only thing that people were searching on were desktops. And so they would search from a desktop, and Google was very happy to collect the data from that desktop, from that session that they were on. No mobile phones, no tablets, no e-commerce, no apps, and they relied on cookies, which basically are just small text files that collected the data on the websites. Well, then things have started to change as technology changes. Now we have more and more different devices. You got iPads, you've got cell phones, you've got laptops, you've got work laptops, all kinds of different things that less and less data was being collected. And Google needed to stay relevant to their clients, who are the people that are Googling things. So they needed to develop a new analytics platform to stay relevant. So they started back a few years ago with developing a better resource for collecting data, which Tag Manager does. They started another platform, Data Studio, which is a better reporting platform, and GA4 came out of that, and that's the best thing they have going now for storing data. So we're going to talk a little bit more in detail about what this all means to us as business leaders. And there's three main topics that we're going to talk about with the introduction to GA4. One are the laws that kind of tripped and triggered it into changing. Two, the users and their movements. And three, technology. What technology has done to make this change required. So without further ado, we're going to get into the laws portion with John.
Thanks, Jim. I do want to take you back a little bit and talk about data privacy and data protection regulations, which truthfully, they've been around for years. It's just they really didn't have any teeth until roughly 2018, when Europe got into the act with something called GDPR, which stands for General Data Protection Regulation. But it was huge. It was a game changer. It was a huge milestone. It made headlines. People were finally made aware of their rights. And today it's become the gold standard. It really is influencing countries around the world when it comes to data privacy, and it's influencing the entire United States. Virginia's in the act. Colorado is being influenced by GDPR. And I would say the state that's being mostly influenced is California. California, in fact, in the last number of years has come up with not one, but two acts, the California Consumer Privacy Act, and just recently the California Privacy Rights Act, which is an expansion on the first one and kicks into gear January 2023. So it's definitely coming your way.
So, John, if I can ask you a question, right? So, they say as California goes, as goes the rest of the country, right? So I'm just curious to get your perspective on what's driving that California mandate. Can you talk about that?
I guess it's really the popularity of GDPR. Since GDPR is huge around the globe, California has wrapped their arms around it, and I thought I'd spend some time actually just giving you and our audience a bit of a heads up on GDPR 101 in a nutshell. The spirit behind GDPR and what California is truly embracing is the two major points, which is transparency with information and this concept of consent. It's all about people controlling who knows what about them and people controlling how this knowledge is being used. What violates GDPR? It's using people's personal data without their consent. And it applies to if you have a business that sells to European residents, or if you have an extension of your organization that sells to Europe, you're under GDPR regulations. So what I want to do is take it back to Google Analytics, which is what this episode is really all about, and where Google Analytics runs into issues with GDPR and violations that happen in Europe. The crux of the matter is that you have European residents with their data sitting on US cloud-based servers with Google Analytics, and that's an issue for GDPR. The other big issue, which I've already mentioned, is consent. Austria just banned Google Analytics on every European website in Austria because of GDPR and GDPR's concerns with the lack of an opt-in or opt-out consent mechanism on Google Analytics. And what comes with that are a bunch of fines. France just fined Google $57 million US, and that trend is continuing with Sweden and Belgium. So I don't see that trend stopping until we begin to embrace some of the aspects of GA4. Now let's go across the pond back to North America, where other than California, I really don't see the spirit of GDPR really kicking in as much as probably we would want to see it, at least not as much as Europe. Things like website cookie banners that we all know about are still nudging people into consenting to tracking them by offering things like free services. We all know advertising companies are tracking you. They're tracking your online behaviors, and they really don't reveal back to you the targeting strategy they figured out all about you. So another issue. And last but not least, we've all heard about Google's third-party cookies are going to be phased out. Fantastic news. But at the same time, Google's figured out something called FLOCs, FLOC, which stands for Federated Learning of Cohorts. Another acronym you're going to forget by tomorrow. Mm-hmm. But FLOCs are just a group. Think about a group of users and their browsing data being now grouped into these behavioral cohorts. And they're all going to be labeled with a FLOC ID that advertisers can use to target you. So minor infringements, but it's still occurring. So you can see that these privacy issues are not going to disappear anytime soon. The bottom line for us here at the Digital Factor is that we believe data privacy regulations are just going to get tougher in the future. So engaging with things like GA4 and other privacy solutions are just going to set your business up for success in the future. And that's all I really had to say on the sort of history of the privacy side of this equation. Back to
awesome,
you, Jim.
John. That's awesome. That's good information, and obviously it's timely because if California's adopting it, obviously we'll start to adopt it across the country. And this is all based on what the users are really asking for and demanding. So Vic's going to talk to us about the users.
Yeah, so let's talk about the users, right? So the crazy thing, guys, is that most of us, right, including me, right, don't know the amount of data companies like Facebook, Google are collecting about us, right? What data they're collecting and how the data is being used, right? So John, you talked about the aspect of that transparency, right? So I would say, companies in the past, right, have not always been transparent about the data that they're collecting about us, right? And it's a joke I have, right? I always say that Google knows more about me than I know about myself, right? It's a joke. However, there's a lot of truth to this, right? So I'm trying to make this real for everyone, right? So I'm going to pivot to the apps many of us use and love today. TikTok, anyone? So anyway, so look, here's the deal, right? The quid pro quo, as I call it, right, is companies say this, right? Look, I will provide you with a free app, right? That makes your life easier, makes your life more enjoyable, kills time, a lot of time sometimes. And in return, I will collect some data about you, right? So that's a quid pro quo that we have, right? And, look, we love our apps. We love our apps when they help us, right? However, there is this tipping point where they go from being helpful, I would say, to being a little bit creepy. And it has to do with data, right? And what I mean by that is that I'm going to use an example, right? So I was searching for a surprise gift for my wife, right? And I was doing a Google search. And the next thing I know, I get a call from her saying, hey, are you looking for a particular item? It's like, wow, we're on different devices, different platforms. And, I'm talking about minutes that she's getting an ad that came up for her, right? So for me, it was that aha moment, right? When I really realized, the amount of data I'm sharing and the need for me to be more mindful about the data I'm sharing and what I'm sharing, right? So, look, John, you talked about, great explanation about data privacy laws like GDPR, what's coming in California. And I think they're really a good start because, finally, us users, right? Individuals take control of our data. They let us decide, what data we want to share and how much we want to share it, right? And I truly believe that these laws are going to really build the trust deficit that exists today between the public and companies, right? So for businesses, right? Let me put a little business hat on, right? So these data privacy laws means that, look, there's going to be less data collected in general, right? So which is going to lead to data gaps, right? So what is Google doing? And we've been talking about that a little bit just a couple of minutes ago. It's like they're coming to the rescue with it, with its powerful. Google Analytics 4, right, with its powerful machine learning and AI algorithms to kind of help close these data gaps, right? So, look, GA4 is new. Google Analytics 4 is new. It's evolving and it's maturing, but it's maturing at a pretty fast rate. And I will bet that it will actually provide businesses with more and better insights in the long term, right? So with that, Jim, I'm going to pivot back to you.
Hey, before we go back to you, Jim, I just have to say, Vic,
yes,
incognito mode. Incognito mode.
Thank you for that tip, Kelly. I take it.
Of course. Yeah, thanks, Kelly. That'll help us all for the next time we're shopping for gifts for our wives. So the last of the three we wanted to talk about was technology, and really there's two kind of main factors with technology. One is, like I said before, when Universal Analytics started, it was a desktop and a desktop only, and now you've got people across several different devices, laptops, desktops. Cell
Jim,
phone.
I'm going to bring up here something called my watch.
Yeah,
collecting
exactly,
all the data.
Right, exactly. So all of that stuff made it more and more difficult to collect cookies. And so they had to come up with something. So that was one thing. The other thing was from the privacy side is the big two tech companies, Apple and Metaverse, that really were at a standstill trying to figure out who was going to be bigger and stronger when it comes to privacy. And so with Apple throwing down and saying you're not going to be able to collect information, that was critical. And Google took a step back and said, well, I don't want to lose clients, people that are doing searches to DuckDuckGo because they're giving more privacy secure searches. Google had to do what they had to do to stay relevant. So that kind of wraps up the three things. And I think, Kelly, you're going to put a bow on all this for us.
Well, I'm going to try to. So, with the changes that we've talked about in technology, in the new laws, and then also in users, in the way, users want to be followed. If you think about it, Google is really at an inflection point, right? And, if we think about it, there are many reasons that we use Google. One is, I know when I type in something, 9 times out of 10, I'm going to get what I'm looking for. But for businesses, one of the reasons that they use Google, and specifically Google Analytics, is they really want to measure what's going on when people go to their website, and really just improve marketing, improve the user experience, and predict what's going to happen in the future, right? To grow their business. At the end of the day, that's what businesses really want to leverage Google Analytics for. And so when we think about this and we think about all the changes that we've talked about, one of the issues is that, like it or not, you are just not going to see as many people as you did in the past, right? So I like this picture a lot because the point of this picture is that you think about the people that are fading. Those are the people who are saying, guess what? We don't want to be measured. And great news for those of you trying to measure them. Number one, stop trying to measure them. That's it. I don't want to be measured. Don't measure me. Better news is the power is really in the trends and the patterns that they go to when they visit your site. So, John, interesting when you talked about flocks. That's really what we care about. We care about what the flocks of people are doing, and that's going to help us to get to the patterns. So, great news here is that, one, we can accommodate the users, and Google Analytics does a great job of that, because what will happen in your universal analytics, you'll start to see, if you haven't already, the traffic is going to drop. It is going to drop because people think about it. I do it. I go to a website and I'm like, cookies, what are they trying to measure? Only what you need. And I feel like empowered, like, oh. But the truth of the matter then becomes, well, if it's my website, I don't want you to opt out of cookies. But there'll be enough people there for me to measure. So Google Analytics takes care of that. From the privacy standpoint, and some of the things that Google Analytics can do is that you can automatically anonymize your IP addresses. So that's taken care of. Google Analytics 4, users have the ability to opt out of tracking tools. And here's something: Google Analytics for the data retention is a lot shorter than what we're used to, guys. It's you can either pick 2 months or 14 months. That's it. And so, we saw longer cycles in Universal Analytics. So that's why you want to go ahead and start doing something and understanding this today. When we talk about technology, still, Universal Analytics is Google Analytics is superior to Universal Analytics. Why? It can actually start to track me as a user versus me as a device. Why is that important? Because if I'm the same user getting to your website by website, and then I have to leave real quick and I go to my car and I go to your website, you really don't want to count that as 2 sessions, do you? You want to count it as one. However, my husband just alerted me, let's put an asterisk by that. because there's some laws or things going on about, can they track you cross device, or should they? So that's something to be in tune for. And to Vic's point, this is changing every day. Mm-hmm. So what do we want you to do? And so what I would say is, at a minimum, go ahead out to Google Analytics 4 and make sure that you have it set up, or your team has it set up for your tracking, and kind of a side-by-side view. Google Analytics, Google wants you to use this and get familiar with it. It won't be a turn off, turn on switch. So you're safe, but now is the time for you to start looking at it. So go to www.measure.tips/GA demo. Google is giving this to you. They're letting you look at their merchandise store and play around with Google Analytics 4. They also give you, there's an account that you can look at called Flooded, which is really interesting. Google can now measure apps, which is fantastic news. And I think that's going to be a strong strength for it. So the other suggestion that I have for you, if you're running analytics today and or you plan to in the future, make sure it's covered in your terms and conditions. Like that's going to be super important for you to do that. Users are getting control. You're seeing these laws, GDPR and what they're doing in California. That's going to be the wave of future. In fact, guys, I know there's a lot going on in laws as it relates to digital marketing. Maybe that's a future episode we can think about to educate people there.
Yeah,
And yeah, I think so. Jim, that's a wrap for me. I hope I put a bow on it.
You did. Very, very nice bow. Well, thank you guys all for pitching in and helping explain kind of a dry subject, but something that's really, really important. So if there's just a couple things that we want to make sure you take away today, make sure that you update your privacy statement. We've talked about privacy. We've talked about conditions and those kind of things, but make sure your privacy statement's up to date and activate GA4, but keep UA running, Universal Analytics running concurrently, because GA4, like Vic said, is always changing, and you want to make sure you hold on to your history with Universal. So that's it for this week. We really appreciate it. Stay tuned next month. We have a special guest speaker, Chris Ballin. He is a head strategist from WSI-ALM. We're going to talk about another Google algorithm update. It's called MUM, Multitask Unified Model. And it's basically how you search and what you need to do with your website to make sure your search, you end up on the first page of the search results page. And just a quick little spoiler alert, video has something to do with it. So that is a wrap for us for number 5. Thanks, guys. And we'll talk to you soon.
All right.
Thanks, guys. Great seeing you guys.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.